Good morning, everyone. This is Carl, and I am very happy to be doing yet another Zynstra webinar here. I'm joined today by Andrew Morledge from Zynstra, James Pullen from Zynstra, Daniel Langton from Telco MSP might be with us, and Jeff Ponce from Telco MSP is with us. So I think that we have about 15, 20 people on as attendees, and more will be joining us as we go along. So with that, let me just let you know what we're going to do today. We're going to talk a little bit about how we price and how we size the sales of the Zynstra device. And so with that, I guess we'll turn it over to Andrew, and let me know when you need to change slides.
You bet. Thanks, Carl. Hi everybody. Carl, do you want to just go through to the next slide, the agenda? Good morning. This is Andrew Morledge. I'm Zynstra US, and we are going to run through for you today a very quick recap if anybody wasn't on last week's introduction to Zynstra, who we are, what we do. And then I'll spend a little bit of time on how we're qualifying and identifying opportunities. James is going to run through the pricing sizing work and a quick demo of that tool, and then Jeff and Daniel from our partner MyCloud MSP are going to just highlight how you sign up as a partner and get access to all the great materials. So let's do a previously on Zynstra recap of last week. If you want to just page on, Carl. So we are a company out of Europe. We have just set up in the US, and we are addressing the huge opportunity for managed services based on a hybrid cloud architecture to small and mid-sized businesses. We're exclusively selling through the channel, so our partners own the customer relationship. And we're addressing a couple of really hot things in the IT market right now. The first is the move towards hybrid as an architecture that people want, the best from cloud, but they also want a lot of security and control that's delivered by on-premise equipment. The second is that there is an end-of-life situation in Microsoft's core operating system for servers. 40% of all of the operating systems out there in the wild are running Windows Server 2003, and that goes end-of-life in July. So Microsoft and HP have banded together and are really actively marketing and promoting that 40% of the install base, which is several million servers, need to move soon. And that customer base that's sitting in in our sweet spot, we believe is absolutely right for a managed service. It's one of the reasons why they're still sitting on old technology, and they're also right for the introduction of a cloud element to their existing on-premise, giving them a hybrid approach. So if you page on, Carl, what we are able to deliver is what you see on the left is the kind of, this sort of summarizes the world that we can see people operating in now, right? They've got a hodgepodge of their own systems that they're struggling to run, which is one of the reasons why they've still maybe got Windows Server 2003. And they're looking at an alternative that says, on the right-hand side, move to the cloud, but then you don't have the, you don't have local data, you don't have local LAN performance, and you're also, for some people, raising concerns about where does my data sit, how can I be certain that it's secure, how can I be certain that if I have a line, any issues around access through the line, that I'm going to get great service. So, Carl, if you just page on again. So what we offer is, in effect, the best of both worlds. We have the security, the control, and the performance that you get on-premise, coupled with the advantages that the cloud brings in terms of the elasticity of size, the ability to do backup and disaster recovery, and the cost advantages of the cloud and access to infrastructure there. And what we can do is dial up or down the amount of capacity that you have on site or in the cloud. So the types of services we offer, Carl, are management, auto backup. If you could just page on, Carl, for me, that'd be great. We offer all the standard services you would expect to see from a Windows Server appliance that's running on site. Because that Windows Server appliance is an HP ProLiant server with our software on it, rendering it an appliance that we can remotely manage and that a customer can manage in a very simple fashion for themselves on site. So we are massively simplifying the management and running and installation and ongoing support and upgrade of a server and operating system, antivirus, backup, disaster recovery, connection to email, and application environment for end customers. So that's our proposition. These are the areas that we cover. And when I say simplified management, Carl, if you just page on, what you'll see is that you as a reseller, you as a partner, can view all of your customers through one simple interface. You can identify when they've got issues through the normal sort of traffic light process, so that you can contact them usually before they've even noticed they've got an issue themselves. And if I'm the customer, so if I'm an SMB, if I'm a school, if I'm a small retailer, or if I'm a local healthcare provider, I will often have maybe an office manager running this setup, or I'll have someone who's not a trained Windows Server certified, expert in how to set up virtual machines and run a private cloud on site. And therefore, what we're providing them with is a really simplified desktop that allows them to do simple functions for themselves. They want to add a new user, and it allows them to see the status of their equipment, but in a through a simplified interface, and that's what you see there. On the next slide, you'll see we provide a range of appliances that scale from very small, from 5 users all the way up to what we've got here is 250, but we can scale all the way up to, I'd say, 500 users on site. We just need to size the equipment appropriately. Everything is sold through a monthly subscription. Now, when I say everything, I mean everything. So the HP server that we put our software on, that's included in the monthly price. Our software is included. The Microsoft software is included. The management of this service is included. The ability to upgrade all of the software on that appliance for the customer so that it is always current, that the antivirus is always current, the operating system is always current, that the intrusion detection programs are always current. All of that is included in a monthly fee. So it is to a customer an operating expense, not a capital expense that they need to have budgeted for already. And that fee goes through you as a partner. You take your margin on that, and you pass through the rest through to us ultimately. So you own the customer relationship. You have a simple pricing structure, and you have a very clear customer proposition. So final thing I want to just run through is, well, okay, what's a good opportunity? How do you spot one? How do you qualify who would be a good customer for this type of service? And on the next slide, Carl, I've sort of simplified that as well I can, and very happy to talk through in more detail. what we are looking at is we're looking for organizations that would typically have between no less than 5. We're not looking for sole proprietors, but 5 to 500 users. So these are mid-market organizations. Our sweet spot is customers who are interested in cloud. They may be talking to you about cloud. They may be talking to these are people that have traditionally maybe bought their own server and then sweat that asset for the last 5 to 7 years. And now they're looking at an upgrade, and they're saying, well, do I really want to buy my own server and then have to figure out for myself what the right what all the right processes are around that, and what the right integration is with the cloud. I've heard, they may be getting contacted by Amazon, who are saying to them, hey, why don't you not do any of that complicated work? Why don't you just come straight to AWS, and we'll run all that for you? And so there may be a confused market. They're interested in some of the cost advantages, the scalability of the cloud, but they're not quite sure they're ready to hand over their business to an organization like that right now. So interested in cloud but not ready to move their entire business. We have a proposition that says we'll deliver all of the peace of mind, if you like, of running your server for you with the advantages of the cloud, but with the advantages in terms of performance and the need maybe that these customers have to run their own line of business apps, or file and print server, or Active Directory, so that they've got single sign-on to their email. We provide that. Second thing might be if you've got an organization that says, hey, I've got old technology, I want to upgrade it. It may be because it's a small business server, it may be Windows Server 2003, or it may be just that they have run out of capacity. But if they say to you, I've got a budget limitation, I don't have the $8,000 right now sitting in in an account that I can just hand over to you. I don't have CapEx. And in that instance, our monthly fee that is absolutely predictable over the lifetime of a 3-year contract may well be a much better solution for an organization that's facing the need to upgrade their equipment but hasn't budgeted it. Or where you want to go to them and say, don't budget as a one-time, one-off transaction. Do that, sign up for a monthly fee, just as you do with many of your other services, from your cell phone to your your telco, your internet provider. Just as you do with them, do the same for technology and put that into the into the bucket of an operating expense that you can be sure for the next 3 years you know exactly how much you're going to be paying. Or finally, if you've got an organization where they may be growing, and they started small and now they've grown to be bigger, or they want to be bigger, but because they started small, they maybe don't have a lot of in-house technical expertise. Well, for them, you're delivering, the sort of the buzzword I would say is you're delivering commercial grade IT for SMB. A lot of these small businesses are competing with much larger companies with dedicated IT departments with the ability to to run a more sophisticated IT operation than they can. Well, we run hundreds and hundreds of these customers right now. We will be running thousands. So we know how to deliver this service at scale extremely efficiently, where we can help them always be current and make sure that they are, that they have the latest IT infrastructure to help them run their business without them needing to be experts themselves. So if they don't have the in-house technical skills because they're growing, again, that's a great sweet spot for us. So this is how I identify a likely customer and some of the advantages that we have. And I'm going to stop here and say hopefully you're now caught up. We're caught up to this week's episode, and I will introduce James to sort of run through how do you size these and how would you go about as a partner pricing them. I think he's got a couple of examples and he's going to show you the tool. If you've got any questions on anything I've been through, can I suggest if you want to put them into the sort of speaker box on the side here, very happy to answer them during the course of this presentation, so that we we don't disturb James. I'd rather do that than take them right now. And if there's anything that you'd like more information on, if you want to drop that in the box, then we can send that to you as well. So thanks very much. James, I think we're all caught up. Tell us a little bit about how we actually size this appropriately for these customers.
Yes, thanks, Andrew. So hi, I'm James Pullen. I'm product management at Zynstra, and I'm based out of the UK. So I want to explain a bit about how you pick the right solution for a customer, and then what the purchasing considerations or the quote considerations are around that. Our solution is obviously sophisticated. It replaces a customer's servers, internet gateway, and it includes management services around that, monitoring consoles, and so on. So there's a certain amount of technical information you need to gather from the customer to make sure you're picking the right appliance for their needs. Now, we'll see there's a number of questions that need answering to quote for a customer or place the order via Cloud MSP. But the number of questions that need to be asked and the complexity of choosing it is less complex than a build-it-yourself solution. Yes, you have to size the hardware properly, but then bearing in mind that the Zynstra solution comprises all of those components, like cloud backup integration, like the cloud storage is included as well. Disaster recovery is included as an option. Internet gateways there, security is there, Active Directory, etc., etc. There's a lot less questions to ask than a traditional IT solution would request, because once you pick the right size appliance, you have all the right components to go alongside that. So while there are a few technical questions to address when talking to the customer, it's really not an onerous task to get this sort of information. So what do you need to do? Well, you need to understand a little bit of information about the customer. You need to understand, obviously, who they are, who the commercial and technical contact is. And we capture that sort of information because we need to fulfill the order on the customer and make sure it's delivered, and that they've answered a few very simple questions ahead of that delivery to confirm things like their public IP address and so on. So we capture a bit of customer information. Carl, if you could go on to the next step in the slide. We select the correct appliance, which can take about 10 minutes per appliance. Why would you have multiple appliances? Well, some of our customers have multiple sites. They might have a head office and a number of branch sites, which they also want to have appliances at to support their local IT requirements. You might also have two physical appliances because the customer wants a high availability solution. But in fact, that's just ticking a box on the order form. You don't have to spec the second standby solution, because we will simply supply one of equivalent specification. Okay, next click please, Carl. Once you specify the appliance for the customer, then it's a case of placing the order, and really that depends, complexity depends on how many products are being ordered, obviously. We'll look at a simple example in a moment. In the simplest case, there's actually only one or two product line items, one or two SKUs that need to be entered into that particular order. If you've got a large, complicated solution, multi-site, lots of optional features in there, then you've got to go to a slightly longer price list for a few more SKUs in there. So how long that takes is going to be varying depending on the complexity of the customer requirements. Okay, thanks, Carl. Next slide. So let's look at an example to illustrate how we pick the right appliance and then how we order the right product line items. A fictional business. This is not one of our customer case studies. This is entirely fictional. called Boston Dogs Home. They have 20 users of their IT systems right now, but they are growing, so we might need to consider what their growth plans are to support them over the duration of the contract. They're migrating their email and Office applications into the cloud, into Office 365, but they still need on-premise file sharing, print sharing, and they've got two applications, an administrative application and an HR application that they want to maintain on site. So we need an appliance that will accommodate that. They also want two-way backup. What two-way backup means is effectively you get a reverse copy of what they're working with in Office 365. So if they've got files being created in Office 365, we can pull them down onto the appliance to make sure they've got a local backup. Should the worst happen, should there be a problem with their Office account, should they lose internet connectivity, maybe they need it for disaster recovery purposes. So we can make sure everything's backed up locally as well as being in Office 365 as well. Next slide, please, Carl. So that's the description of the customer. We need to capture that and determine what appliance is most suitable for them. Carl, what do you think? Can we have a look at this appliance now, or would you rather push it to the end? It'd be great if we could flick it up on screen at the moment.
Why don't we go ahead and wait till the end, and then I'll just hand you the control.
Okay, no problem. Right. So what I'll do is I'll move on to the technical selection and the licensing structure of the right element. And we'll look at technically how you enter the information into the appliance selector to help you choose the right appliance. But there's a number of things that we'll see in the appliance selector. None of them should be a surprise. It's how many users do you have as a customer? What are your data storage requirements? Do you want a high availability solution? How many applications or virtual machines do you need locally on your private cloud environment? And perhaps addressing that in reverse order, estimating virtual machine size is something that is sometimes difficult to do in a pre-sales stage with the customer. I mean, you might run this appliance selector or this exercise fairly early on with the customer to provide an indicative quote, and then you might get into a bit more detail later on to actually do the final order into Cloud MSP and into Zynstra so that we can make sure we're delivering exactly the right configuration. But estimating the virtual machine sizes obviously has a big impact on the appliance that we end up shipping, as much as user count or file storage. Because each appliance, as was shown in Andrew's graph previously, has additional capacity, has more CPUs, more RAM, more storage capacity for each of those VMs. So picking the right size VMs for your appliance is important to the appliance selection criteria. Can you click just to build that slide, please, Carl? Next click. Go on, keep going. There should be, let me see, bring them all up. I think there's 6, yeah. Keep going, 3 more. Brilliant, thanks very much. Now, choosing a VM size is a case of allocating CPU count, RAM, and storage requirements. We today containerize those, so you have everything from an extra small to an extra large virtual machine available to be deployed in your private cloud on that appliance, and each one has a different specification. Choosing the VM, probably the best way to do it is to look at, well, what is the hardware that the application is running on today, and pick a virtual machine that has similar virtual resources. In practice, if they're migrating off a Small Business Server 2003 server or even 2008, moving to our virtual core will probably actually give them additional performance. But it's a good rule of thumb to say if it's running on a dual core machine now, let's specify a VM with dual core requirements. But here's some just indications, some guidelines for picking virtual machines for particular popular applications. Remote desktop services, we can support 20 to 30 users on a large virtual machine. SQL Server Express, a medium virtual machine. SQL Server Standard, which has a bigger footprint, requires an extra large virtual machine. And there you can see things like Exchange, SharePoint Foundation, and Protex Advanced Filtering is a filtering solution dedicated to the education market. So picking the right VM is an important step in sizing the right appliance, as we'll see when we open up the Excel spreadsheet tool. Okay, next slide, please, Carl. Okay, keep clicking. There's plenty of animations in this one. That's great. Let's get it fully built until the end. There we go. One more click. There we go. Oh, too far. That's it. Perfect. Thank you very much. I should have removed the build to make Carl's life a lot easier. Let's say, for example, as we'll see in the case of Boston Dogs Home, let's say the right size appliance for them is a 1420. That will support their 20 to 30 users. It will support their 2 virtual machines. What do you actually need to buy in order to deliver a 1420 to a customer? Well, you need to order a 1420 appliance. That is the physical appliance. It comprises the full management services around that, the keep current, the monitoring, etc., etc. And that is subject to a recurring subscription payment. So that could be anything from a few $100 to a couple of $1,000 per month, depending on the size of the appliance that's actually being delivered. If you want a high availability 1420, then you tick the box on the order form for high availability, and for an increment in that price, that monthly price, you get a second physical server to deploy in a clustered environment, giving full failover capabilities. So basically you have a recurring payment, subscription payment for the appliance and the core services that go around that. You may want some additional optional services and capabilities. So I'm not going to go into a lot of detail about what those individual services are, but let's pick one that's popular: cloud backup and disaster recovery. This is a service that makes sure the entire appliance, including the user's data, virtual machine data, and all the images, disk images around that, are backed up to the cloud so they can be restored in the event of a disaster recovery situation. Again, that is something that has a recurring monthly payment on top of the appliance monthly payment to cover that particular service. The great thing about that is that even if you actually require a disaster recovery event, you need your appliance fully restored because it has to be rebuilt after a fire or a theft. That's included in the monthly payment. There's no unexpected additional fees should you need to actually call off on that disaster recovery. And then other things that you may purchase in a subscription payment on top of that are managed applications. So these are applications that Zynstra deploys into a virtual machine, and we make sure that these applications are patched, kept current, and secure as well. So as well as the platform, the private cloud environment being kept up to date and patched, we can actually maintain the applications running in there as well. Remote desktop services, Exchange, or be seeing more managed applications added to this list as time goes on. And again, they just incur an additional monthly fee. That includes the operating system, the licenses, supply licenses from the vendor, and our support to monitor those applications and keep them current as well. So you can see there's a lot of consistency here. You buy everything with a subscription price, no upfront capital costs, no big surprises, and just a regular, predictable monthly fee. It's worth pointing out at this point that as we look at the Boston Dogs Home example, they've just got a couple of their own applications, an admin application, an HR application, that needs to be deployed into virtual machines. There's no additional charge here for virtual machines. So that 1420 has a certain amount of virtual machine capacity. That's included in the 1420 subscription. That also includes Linux or Windows operating systems for those virtual machines as well. There's, again, nothing extra to pay there in order to deploy a customer's own line of business applications onto the appliance. Okay, next slide, please, Carl. Thanks very much. Now, that allows us to choose, well, what products are being ordered? An appliance, optional features, curated applications. Now, the exact price for the paid for each of those can vary due to a number of things. The length of contract that the customer is willing to go for. Obviously, the longer the contract length that they sign up for, the cheaper the price. So we encourage them to go for 3 years, 5 years, and they get a discount on their monthly payments accordingly. Similarly, the payment terms that the customer is happy to go for, whether they want to pay yearly upfront or every month. Again, if they pay yearly upfront, that's good for everybody on this call, and therefore they get a slight discount on that subscription fee. And finally, the business type. So are they a commercial business or are they a not-for-profit or education business? For not-for-profit and education, there's a lot of savings to be had because a lot of the underlying license costs for things like the Windows server and so on are reduced, and we pass that saving on to the not-for-profit and education customers. So again, they have a different price for their products as well. So what it effectively means is that there is a very specific SKU, a very specific part number and price that combines all of those things together. So there's an individual product code that says this is a 1430 appliance, it's contracted for 3 years, it's paid monthly, and it's for commercial use. If it was a 1430 appliance contracted for 3 years for commercial use, paid yearly, you'd have one number on that particular line item. That particular SKU would change, and you need to make sure you're picking the right one to go on the order form that we'll have a look at in a moment. And that applies to all products, so the appliances, the options, the managed applications, each of those will vary in price depending on the length of the contract, payment terms, and the business type. Okay, next slide please, Carl. So, for example, going back to Boston's Dog's Home, as we'll see on the appliance selector tool at the end, the right appliance for those guys is a small, medium-sized business IT appliance 1420. We spec that out for 30 users to accommodate some growth. We're including backup and disaster recovery for them, so that it's all backed up to the cloud. And as we noticed, we've got an administration piece of software which we're going to deploy in a Windows VM, and a bespoke software, I think it's an HR application based on a LAMP stack that we'll deploy into a Linux VM. As I said, some of those things are inclusive and some are not. So under those circumstances, if that's what the customer needs from the Zynstra solution, what would the actual order look like in terms of what line items would we need to place an order on Cloud MSP for? Next slide, please, Carl. There we go. So the customer has agreed to a 3-year contract. They're happy to be billed monthly. As we said, they want a 1420 appliance, which has a monthly price. So there is an order line item, a SKU for that 1420 appliance that will reflect that it's a 1420 3-year contract and billed monthly. There's a single SKU that rolls up those 3 pieces of information and has a price associated with it, in this case, a monthly price associated with it. We're going to be providing them with backup and disaster recovery, and again, that has an order line item, a product code, which will vary depending on the contract and build length. And they require 2 virtual machines, but as I mentioned, the virtual machine capacity is included in that 1420. They get the Windows licenses included in the 1420, they get the Linux licenses and so on. There's actually nothing additional for them to pay. They just need to deploy their applications into those 2 virtual machines. They haven't bought any other options other than the cloud backup and DR. In this case, they haven't gone for any on-premise exchange because they've gone all into the cloud for their Office apps and Office Exchange. So we're not selling them a curated and managed exchange application. If we did, there would be one more line item in there for the monthly cost for their 20 to 30 users using Exchange on-premise. But as it stands, this is a pretty straightforward order to be placed for the 1420 for Boston's Dog's Home. Next slide, please. Now again, what we'll do at the end when I demo this is we'll show that once you've captured the technical information within the appliance selector, there is a final tab in the appliance selector that allows you to put in the product codes, the SKUs that are going to be ordered to that particular customer. And that just really closes the loop on making sure that we have all the information that we need, both technical and commercial, for that order to be placed on Zynstra and for that order to be fulfilled. So basically, once this appliance selector is complete for a customer's requirements, that's all the information we need to start the procurement process, the build process, to get to the point where we're ready to ship that appliance and turn on their management services for that particular customer. There's a couple of little things that we ask the customer for the delivery and installation stage that can come post-sales, and that is double-checking that they've got somewhere to put the appliance, the right power there, is it a secure location, and we need a little bit of information about their public IP addresses and so on. But that all information is captured post-sale, just ahead of the installation of the actual appliance. As I say, the appliance selector basically is the reference point that we all have within this chain from the customer through NSPs, through Cloud MSP to Zynstra, to make sure we got the technical information, contact information, and commercial information to close that deal and get something shipped out to the customer. Next slide, please. Just build this with these 3 boxes coming up. So there we go. That's just what I've said. So your role would be to fill out those product codes, those SKUs, into the final tab of the appliance selector, and we'll look at that in a moment. That gets passed on, obviously, to Cloud MSP to then fulfill the order via Zynstra. We've got that information, and then we're all able to process the order. Now, that will become a lot clearer when I show you the appliance selector tool at the end of this. That's really a quick run-through of how you pick the right appliance, what the considerations actually are, both from a technical and commercial perspective. Next slide, please, Carl. We have a lot of additional support material that goes into that in more detail. So again, it will look at the appliance selector. Sorry, Carl, can you go on to the next slide? It's not appeared on this end yet. Brilliant. We've got a lot of online training resources, online videos that go into quite a lot of detail about all of this, and some of the things you've probably seen in the previous webinars as well. So an introduction, overview of the proposition. It shows an extensive demo of the appliance selector, and it runs through what we've just seen there in terms of making sure you're picking the right product codes to place an order. And it then goes into a lot of additional detail about then, well, what happens after that? What is the service delivery process? How is it deployed on-site? What are the prerequisites for the customer to receive that appliance on-site? What sort of work needs to be carried out by you guys, by the MSPs working with that customer to make sure it's deployed, applications and users and data are migrated onto that appliance, and then now up and running as quickly as possible. And there's also additional information there about what control you then have over that appliance in terms of your own monitoring capability on that appliance. So Zynstra obviously is monitoring these things 24/7, but equally you have visibility of your end customers' appliances. And you may also work with the customer to perform certain configuration tasks such as firewall, filtering, adding users, removing users, setting up file shares, in addition to meet customer requirements. And all that is documented in lots of detail in these online videos that we can offer you guys access to as part of an onboarding process with Cloud MSP and Zynstra. Okay, I'm going to hand over to Jeff in a moment, who's just going to explain a little bit about placing the order on Cloud MSP. So once you've filled out, got that technical information, commercial information, how today you can work with Cloud MSP to deliver these solutions to customers. And then Jeff, if you could hand back to me afterwards, and Carl hands over control, I'll actually give you a quick demo of that Excel spreadsheet, which should make it clear the sort of technical information that's being captured. And again, if you've got any questions, put them in the chat window, or we have got time at the end for a Q&A session as well, I believe. Thank you.
Let me just clarify, put the questions in the question window. We're not really going to use the chat. So.
Okay, great.
All right, Jeff, you're up.
Yep, I am. Well, welcome everybody, and I'm Jeff Pons, and I'm one of the co-founders of Cloud MSP, and we are a specialty value-added distributor of IT services, and we don't take that lightly because I think we're really kind of blowing up the traditional distribution model, and I know you guys know how that works now, right? So if you're dealing with the big guys right now, and how they work is they make most of their money charging fees to the vendors for to promote their product, almost like large-scale MDF funds, kind of a thing. And that's the vast majority of their income. The next place where they make a sizable amount of money is financing those products. And then lastly, the margin they make from their cost and what they charge you for that product is a very slim part of their margin, almost like a Costco model, really. And we didn't like that model so much for us, so we decided to kind of turn that upside down. Everything that we sell is a recurring. It comes with a recurring revenue component. So any product that we're going to bring on, like Zynstra, Zynstra is a perfect example. We're going to vet it to make sure it's best of breed, but we want it to be OpEx. And I want you to understand for a second, because you're not buying anything, Zynstra Cloud MSP is supporting you. So we have value for the life of your customer with you. So we're tied at the hip with you. So there's nothing to buy. It's a recurring revenue model that we're all sharing in from day one to the end of life of that customer. So there's no different motivation for us. There's no motivating pushing you from one product to another because we make more money. We are going to be with you from day one to the end of life of that customer. That's why the Zynstra model works for us, and any other product that we bring on is going to come with that high standard that Zynstra has, because this isn't one of those, we're going to sell you a product and then move on to the next customer. We are tied to you to the very end, as I already said. You know, and again, everything we do comes from a recurring revenue model. You know, currently we're helping existing MSPs actually increase their net bottom line as far as recurring goes, and also helping those traditional VARs go to a recurring revenue model without the big investment, which is very difficult. So on the side of, you know, trying to help you scale your business, Andrew, who started this, Cloud, and I were on a phone with a fairly successful MSP yesterday. As a matter of fact, I'd have to call him the poster child for success. This guy has invested from day one hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars. He was kind of going through that with us yesterday in RMM tools and, you know, product licenses. He built a NOC, engineers. His investment has been significant, and he is running a company that's working well. So he doesn't have anything broken. And when he's doing well, his customers love him. He's grown over the course of time because he's just taken amazing care of his customers, and I don't think any one of them are ever going to leave him for what he does. But he also knows that to try to scale that is very difficult. And so he's looking right now at the Zynstra solution because he knows that he wants to work more on his business instead of in his business. Right now he can't get away from his business. Even taking vacations is difficult. It has difficulties with it. So he, again, is not looking at this solution because something's broken. He is just trying to improve his existing business. On the outsourcing, sales, and engineering, Cloud MSP has a team between engineers in NOCs and support and provisioning, and on the pre-sale side, roughly 40 folks. You all have payrolls that you're taking care of right now. You know what it's like just to add one. So we're here to help. And so it's up to you to use these teams to help you to scale your business. As far as community goes, I think from day one, Zynstra had the idea to build a community. They went right to Carl from day one to create a community. It started with an advisory board and it's built from there, because there's nothing worse than like you're on an island trying to figure out how to do things. So we want to create best practices around that, because there's always going to be tricks of the trade and nuances that we want you to know from day one instead of having to wait down the line. On the telecom side, you know, that actually the telecom side of the world is my background. My business partner Dan and Dan comes from the software development integration side of the world. I come from the telecom world, and we've built a pretty robust practice. We've got quite a number of very tenured sales engineers, many of them with more than 20 years of experience that have been with us for at least 10 years. They know their space, and they know, you know, what bandwidth needs the customer's going to have, because again, these servers are going to sell. You want it to work well. You don't want to get blamed because the service doesn't work well because you don't have enough bandwidth or a poor quality of bandwidth. And on top of that, voice services. One thing I can tell you after many years in this business is, you know, you screw up someone's data, they're mad at you, and you get around that and fix it. You screw up their voice, and you have an enemy for life. And so you want to make sure you get the right team behind you that knows how to build the scope of works up front and do all the pre-sale stuff and provision stuff very, very well, so you have a happy customer. Voice is still the killer app, and I don't see that leaving for quite some time. The phone might look different over the course of time, how it's answered. It might be on your cell phone. It might be Star Wars type, but the reality is voice is still the killer app, and I think for most of our careers it's going to be. On the marketing side, Tim, we've invested for the long haul here. And we have intuitive marketing with us, and some of you have already talked to Sean, some haven't. But again, we're here for the long haul. Sean's going to help you with building campaigns, with managing lead generation, collateral, microsites, and even the sales playbook to really help you with your existing teams and hopefully future teams. And this comes with the service of working with us at Cloud MSP. We're going to give you all the technical training and certifications you need. And I want to give the caveat here to the right partners. So we're investing a lot. Zynstra has invested a lot. And we're looking for the right partners, not just quantities, because that just doesn't work. We're going to support at every level, but we're expecting you to get your technical teams trained on the service. We're not charging you for that training, but it still does take training, right? Like anything that you're going to sell and deploy to your customers. Carl, can we go to the next slide, please? And so, is this the ideal solution for you? I think it is. I think Andrew started that conversation. There's millions of servers coming to end of life. Microsoft's announcements are very clear around Small Business Server and Windows 2003. HP, Dell, you name it, they all have services that are coming to end of life. And your customers are talking about the cloud day in and day out, and they talk about it because they're trying to understand what's happening, but at the same time, they're a little bit nervous. And nobody forklifts their entire ecosystem in one day. No one says, hey, cloud guy, I trust you. Here's everything in one day, just don't screw it up. They're going to do it in phases. And the hybrid model of Zynstra is really perfect for that, right? So you're giving them an appliance that has all the benefits of the cloud. So they have the appliance there, they have the replication, they have everything they need, and it's that modernized step up without taking a step off the cliff. And are we driving high margins? Yeah, absolutely. When you look at the cost of doing business, because Zynstra is doing all the patches, all the updates to the conversation that Andrew had already had, with Zynstra doing all the heavy lifts in the background, your margins should be much higher and helping you to go after net new business. And that is it from my end, Carl. We really want to work with you. I would love to have a conversation. Matter of fact, I would say go to the website, go to mymspcloud.com, and just register there. Let's have a 15-minute conversation. Let's see if we're a fit. If we're not, we can just move on and be friends and talk at some other time. But if we're a good fit, we can take you to the next level and help you be really profitable in 2015. Thank you.
All righty. Go ahead.
Carl, go ahead and hand it. I think you were going to hand it back to James.
Yeah. So James, do you got your screen ready? You got all your real estate stuff down there, so we can't see it.
Good to go. If you can pass over control.
All right. I'm going to make you the presenter. All right. There we go.
Right, yeah, you can see my screen?
Yes, sir.
Okay, let's just make a bit of room. Okay, so what we have in front of you now is the appliance selector tool. As I said, it takes you the steps of collecting technical data, customer data, and finally putting in your product IDs, your SKUs, in order to make sure we've got everything in one place as a team to progress this order through a customer. We haven't missed anything. So a quick reminder on the first tab of the steps that you need to go through that I've talked to already. You then have some space here to put some customer information in, so we know who this order relates to. So this is Boston Dogs Home. They're a commercial organisation. Now, if you remember, I said the choice of commercial, education, and not-for-profit will affect the price and the SKUs that you actually have to order from Cloud MSP through to Zynstra. You can put an address in, a main business contact, so the person who probably handles the order process, the contracting process, a deployment technical contact, so have they got their own in-house IT or just somebody who has access to the data center or the network configuration. You can put those contact details in. Obviously, again, that helps with the order process, the delivery process. And then the contract duration and billing frequency that they want to go with, 1 year, 3 years, 5 years, monthly, quarterly, annually, and so on. Now, as I said, you can use this tool at different stages in the conversation with the customer. You don't have to fill in a definitive contract duration or billing frequency if you're using this early on to do some indicative sizing or indicative pricing. I normally assume 3 years, monthly in advance. It's what the most popular contract terms are, so if you're just doing something indicative, go with those defaults to make your estimates. It obviously doesn't actually change the size of appliance or the model selected. Then you across the bottom, you'll see you've got a number of tabs. Now, remember back to I answered the question of how many appliances a customer needs. They've got multiple sites. You might want to fill in one of these tabs per site to capture the different requirements they have in each of their offices. Now, in case of Boston's Dogs Home, they've only got one location, so we're just going to fill in tab number 1, put some technical information in it, or choose the right size appliance, the right product for that customer. Now, first of all, let's have a quick look at the top there. So we've selected a commercial contract for this customer. It's only showing me the business and not-for-profit solutions because they come from the same product range. They each have, both those price lists have the 1400 to the 1460 appliances. And you can see the education solutions are grayed out because we're not offering a product from the education range. Now, if I've got multiple sites, I can just put a name in for each of those sites, but this is Boston Dogs Home, so we'll just say main office. Number of users. We know they've got 20 users now, but they have plans to grow their team. So we're going to say over the 3-year period, perhaps they'll have 30 regular IT users. Because as much as possible, we want to pick an appliance that will last them without needing to be replaced or upgraded over the contract terms. We can, if growth is unexpected, upgrade them to a later appliance. So push them up a level and recontact with them. But ideally, we want to pick something that's going to be suitable for, in this case, a 3-year term. How many files are going to be stored on the appliance? Let's assume 10 gigabytes per user. They're not massive file users. They're not doing media or content creation. So let's say they've got 200 gig now, 300 gig over the term of the contract. But they also need to store data that is created in Office 365. So they're going to pull down data from O365 to make sure they have a local backup for disaster or emergency situations. So how much file storage do they need for Office 365? Well, they've got none today. This is a new service. But let's say they have, I don't know, another 150 gigabytes of backup requirements for Office files that need to be accommodated on this appliance. Now, at this point, you'll see, as I've been entering details about the customer, some crosses have appeared at the top, and there's some diamonds there. What a diamond means is the tool hasn't got enough information to determine whether this is appropriate or inappropriate. But the crosses mean the 1400 and the 1410 are already out of scope, and that's because of the user count and the file storage requirements. Those two appliances are too small. They're designed for 5, 10, 15 users. And we're looking at something to support 30 users. So maybe the 1420, I don't know, maybe the 1430 is going to be the right solution for this particular customer. Let's finish filling in the technical requirements. They're not using Exchange Server on-premise. Locally, they're going to go with Exchange in the cloud, so we don't need capacity to host that. Same for SharePoint, we're not going to be using that. No remote desktop access. They have a choice whether they want the appliance to be delivered in a rack mount format. so 1U or 2U, depending on the appliance size, or a tower format. And we have a number of different towers, from microservers through to, I think they're all MIDI-sized tower solutions. So in this case, the customer favors a tower solution. That's made a big difference. We've now got 2 potential appliances, and a number have been qualified out. So 1440 through to 1460, no longer available, or appropriate rather, because they're only available as a rack solution. But we've still got 2 products that are still appropriate for this customer. And if we just finish filling in the details, no high availability for this customer in the sense that they're not having a 2-node cluster. They do want cloud backup. We've got a field here just to confirm their WAN upload bandwidth. This is just for reference purposes, because obviously if you're backing up a whole appliance and all the data to the cloud, we need to make sure when we're processing the storage that it's got sufficient capacity, bandwidth to enable this to take place. We're very efficient. We only update deltas for the most part. We very occasionally have to do a full backup over a number of hours or days. Nightly, it's only a delta, but we just need to double check that given the data storage requirements, they will have sufficient upload bandwidth. So they've got a reasonable IC where they are, so they've got 20 megabits per second upload. We just record that there to allow us to check the order when it goes through. And then finally, the final thing that's going to change the appliance requirements is going to be the virtual machines. So in this case, we know they've got 2 virtual machines. They've got an admin app, and they've got a HR app. Now, we've estimated that these are both medium-sized virtual machines, and if you have a quick look over here, here's a quick reference to what that means. A medium virtual machine is 2 virtual cores, gigabyte memory, 4 gigabytes of memory, 60 gigabytes of file space. That's in addition, if you like, to the C drive. There's image space there for the operating system and the programs. That gives you 60 gigabytes dedicated to file storage for that particular appliance. And there's a total gigabyte storage. Because there's also an equivalent amount of backup space on there. So all of these VMs have a local backup as well as cloud backup. So there's enough additional space in that VM to not only have 60 gigabytes of user space, but 60 gigabytes of backup space for local backups and history files. We'll go with Windows 2012 R2 and the HR app on the latest long-term support Ubuntu Linux. And there we go. At the top, it's saying that the 2 most appropriate appliances here are the 1420 or the 1430. The obvious thing to do is to pick the most affordable that is listed. There's no point in this case of picking 1430. The 1420 meets these customers' needs. Sometimes when you're having conversations with customers, there's stuff that you can't capture in an Excel spreadsheet, so maybe there's something that you know about their solution that means you might want to bump them up another level. But in this case, we're happy with the 1420 as meeting all their requirements for users, data storage, backup, and virtual machine capacity. So I can choose, say, 1420 down here. I can override this if I want for those reasons and add a little note. But basically, that's it. We've chosen the right appliance to propose to the customer, and at the same time, we've captured all the technical information that Zynstra needs to build, configure, and this so it's ready to go when it's plugged in on the site. Which then leads us to kind of close the loop on the data capture in the spreadsheet, and we can put an actual order in here. Now this page here at the moment is simply somewhere you can drop in your SKUs and your prices as a convenience. It means everything's in one place for putting the order through. So what I would do at this stage is I would go to my price list that you will have been furnished with, and I would look up the SKU, the product code for a 1420 on a 3-year contract paid monthly. And I would put that in, where is it? Here, the appliance subscription fee. You obviously have one of those for the customer, and then you put in the price that you're going to be buying that from your distributor cloud MSP. They can then take this order form themselves, fill in the remaining detail, and place the order on Zynstra. That's why you'll see the 2 tables here. One is for you to place an order on cloud MSP, and then to carry this data through to the end of the process, they're able to then put in their details and pass that order on to us for fulfillment. there's quite a lot of space here, and you'll see there's multiple tabs if there's multiple sites. As we've seen from the Boston Dog Zone example, you may only have 1 or 2 SKUs that you need to enter in here. There's space to enter in deployment services which may be offered to customers. That's really up to you whether you want to include installation, migration services with the customers. There's the monthly or yearly appliance subscription fee, and then there's subscription fees for any of the options. So in the case of Boston's Dog Zone, you would have a SKU here for cloud backup and DR. You put the specific SKU in there, one of those to go with the appliance. Only 2 things need to be ordered. Nice and simple. You can pass that on to get that particular order fulfilled. So you go. That captures everything in one place. As I said at the start, I work in product management, but one of my most important roles is trying to make this as easy as possible for you guys. So we're always onwardly developing these and making them smarter. And there's things I'm looking at doing already to take this a step further and automatically pick SKUs, automatically fill in prices and so on. But already it's a really good tool to make sure that we've asked all the questions of the customer, captured all the technical information. We have everything in one place to be able to process the order. That's really what this is actually all about. Okay, well that's it from my perspective. I encourage you, if this has been of interest to you, as was recommended, contact Cloud MSP. Find out more about the onboarding process and what together we can offer you. Check out the Zynstra.com website. Press release went out this week about our first customer in North America and our launch in North America as well. There's a lot going on there already. Just check it out, and it'd be great to hear from you. Thanks very much. So I'll just hand back to Carl, I think, to wrap things up.
Very good. Thank you, sir. And I know that we're just like right at time, so let me just encourage folks to get a hold of Jeff and James and Andrew, and if you have any questions, we have a few that we're going to answer today. But if you have additional questions, you can get a hold of them between now and next week. So let me see about the questions we have. Everybody's saying hi to George. How is the end user protected if something happens to the reseller? So if somebody buys a device from me and I go out of business, I assume that's the question. What happens to my customer with regard to Zynstra?
Well, the service is a Zynstra service, so everything will still continue to run, and everything would revert over to Zynstra from Cloud MSP.
All righty. And I'm assuming they would at some point try to find another reseller and associate that.
Sorry, Carl, Sandra, I was on mute. Exactly right. That, we typically get asked the question the other way around. So let's address both of those, right? If the reseller goes bust and I'm a customer, then what we'll do is, we will work with our partner, Cloud MSP, on identifying the right reseller for them to move to. The more usual question that the resellers ask is, what if the customer goes bust? Well, you as a reseller are running the customer relationship, and you are responsible for the customer contract. Now, and I want to say 2 things about that. The first, so yes, you are on the, you are responsible for that continued contract. However, what we'll do to help you is, firstly, if a customer goes busted, clearly they're not going to be using that equipment anymore. So they don't need the software, they don't need the managed service. There are many things that go away, costs associated with that contract that go away, and we would look to redeploy the equipment as well. So we'll work with you to figure out what the best solution is for that scenario. It happens very infrequently. We haven't had anybody yet go bust, and typically it's fewer than 1% of customers. And as soon as you get to scale, obviously you'll be making enough margin that in the very rare situation where a customer does go bust, that you can absorb the costs associated with that from the Zynstra service and others. So you know, in both situations, we'll work with you.
All righty.
But a fair question though, because you know, Cloud MSP, even though the name of Cloud MSP is relatively new, it's part of a larger group of businesses that my partner Dan and I started 12 years ago. And you know, when we keep touting the residual revenue model, well, we have roughly 5,300 customers worldwide, and all recurring revenue. So we're here for the long haul, and we're profitable. We're not going anywhere.
Excellent. So Rafi has a question about a firewall. Can the system be used without the built-in firewall? He's of a mind that the firewall should be a separate piece of hardware, given the nature of virtual machines and so forth.
I'll take that one. James here. Thanks. Good question. Yeah, it's certainly a common question. So the first thing I'd point out is that the appliance does include a firewall, and firewalls these days are all essentially appliances running software at the end of the day. And we've picked one that we think is offering excellent levels of protection for small, medium-sized businesses. And obviously the important thing to bear in mind is that it's the one that we have fully tested and fully integrated with that user file space, VM environments, and so on. So if you go with the one we've got, should give you all the functionality an SMB needs. We keep it current, it's patched, it's up to date. We've tested it before we roll anything out. So for that reason, we firmly believe that our firewall is the right choice and should be far more secure than going with a third party that then needs to be managed separately. That said, we understand that people may have invested in firewalls already, or there may be a particular piece of functionality in one model or another that particular enterprise needs. And for that reason, yes, we can deploy the appliance behind an established firewall. That's no problem at all. We simply have to set up the network addressing in such a way that it passes straight through. But yeah, you get all the same level of functionality in terms of VM security for the LAN and WAN and so on. It just sits behind somebody else's box. So that's certainly an option for end customers if they've invested in firewalls. In our experience, in my experience, it's not so much that they're choosing a certain level of security or functionality over the Zynstra solution. It's just that firewalls, once they've been set up, they like to leave them just so. They'd rather leave an existing firewall in place with settings that they're comfortable and familiar with and deploy our functionality behind it. So yes, that's certainly an option.
Very good. And lots of people have ongoing contracts with various vendors, so they've already got a firewall that they know and they love and they put in all their clients. Andrew asks about what would the Boston Dog's home price actually be, and I think we've sort of addressed how you would get that with the demonstration of the tool. So final question, George asks, how do we ensure that we are using the most recent price list and configuration tool?
That's a very good question, and one as product management I'm frequently challenged with. So we built some quite sophisticated tools in Excel at the moment, and we have a process whereby for partners, MSPs, resellers, and so on, we can push those updates out. So the way I like to approach it, I like to make sure stuff is pushed out to you guys, that you're actively updated, but also that you have somewhere to go to pull that information down if you need it on a case-by-case basis, or you want to double-check you've got the latest one. So you end up on our, obviously as a partner, on our distribution list. We can push these updates out to you. That would typically include things like tools, tech notes, new product release notes, and so on. If the price list changes, obviously we need to pass that to Cloud MSP because they own the ordering process from the MSPs. MSPs order from Cloud MSP. So they'll need to pass that information on. Going forward, I'm starting to look at investing more in some online tools. So it makes my life a lot easier if I know that people are going to an online tool to use the latest appliance selector rather than assuming everyone's got the latest version. But that's where we are now. We've got pretty good tools in Excel format. I'll make sure that those get pushed out as they're updated. Going forward, you may see more functionality appearing in a partner portal style solution as well.
All righty then. Well, we are just a little bit over time, so I want to thank people for their patience with us, and we will be back. We got one more January webinar, and it is the 29th at 9 a.m. Pacific, and I'm going to try to get together an announcement on my blog with some information about what we're going to cover on that. But I thank you for your time today. I'll try to get a recording up of this as well, so look for that. And again, just check out my blog at smallbizthoughts.com. And of course, get a hold of Andrew, James, Daniel, and Jeff anytime to talk about solutions. And in particular, if you've got any hot prospects, please get a hold of Jeff as soon as possible. They would love to help you get this quoted and installed in one of your clients. Thank you very much, and that will end the program for today.